Hello, I'm Daniel, and welcome to the Emunah Project and our continuing series of basic texts, fundamental texts in Judaism. Today, I want to talk about the Passover Haggadah. The Passover Haggadah. Those of you who are new to Judaism or haven't had a lot of experience since you were a little kid, Passover, which is coming up at the time of this video, it's going to be about a month away. Passover starts, and the first and second night, if you're outside of Israel, the first and second night, we have a Passover seder. Seder means order, as in terms of like the order something happens. It's a very ritualized meal. And it has, for lahavdil, for lack of a better word, it has a script. And that script is the Passover Haggadah. And it goes into great detail as to what, not only what the blessings are, but also how to set up the Seder plate, what goes on it. And at the beginning of the meal, there is a lot of reading. It tells the story of Passover, how it came about. It talks about the bondage in Egypt, about the plagues. And it's meant for everyone, but it's specially geared for children. There's all sorts of questions and very unusual things to keep the kids interested. If you haven't had a chance to go to a Passover Seder yet, see if you can somehow catch an invitation, because if it's your first time and if you get the right one, it'll be an event. There's all sorts of different kinds of Haggadahs. Different publishing companies comes up with different kinds. This is a very useful one, especially for converts, for Gerim, and for Baalei Tshuva, for returnees. This is brilliant. This is the Art Scroll Children's Haggadah. Although it's geared toward young people, for children, it is a warehouse of information. You get so much out of that. If you can get a hold of it, and like a couple of days before the Seder, start reading up, it'll make things much more meaningful. There's all different kinds of Haggadahs, and of course, in different countries, you'll have them in different languages. You'll have them in Spanish, you'll have them in French, you'll have them in German. Obviously, all Haggadahs are in English, are in Hebrew as well as whatever language. This is mine. This is an Italian Haggadah. I like to, when I can, find things in Italian. It means a lot to me. But there's lots of different kinds of Haggadahs. Now, if you have relatives or friends, and there are members of the families who've been around a long time, even longer than me, you may run into something called a Maxwell House Haggadah. This is a Haggadah that was made by the Maxwell House Coffee Company. And there's an interesting little story that goes along with it that explains why you have a Maxwell House Haggadah. See, when Jews came to America, a lot of the Jews that came to America, especially in the old days, 100 years ago, were from Ashkenazi countries, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, the western part of Russia, the Ukraine, Poland, the Baltic countries, and along with their customs and their language, Yiddish, they also had Ashkenazi customs. One of the restrictions of Passover is not to eat chametz, which literally means wheat, rye, barley, oats, spelt. That's what chametz is. But the Ashkenazim expanded that to include other products, specifically legumes, specifically, as far as this little story is concerned, beans. beans, peas. Now, there was a concern that a lot of the Ashkenazi Jews said, well, coffee is made from coffee beans. Beans aren't permitted on Pesach, on Passover, so we're not going to drink coffee. That's not true, by the way, but there was the fear of this misconception. So the Maxwell House Coffee Company, in a brilliant move, I think, in order to tell people that coffee is not forbidden. You can have coffee on Passover. They put out the Passover Haggadah, the Maxwell House. It's a blue and white Passover Haggadah. Somewhere in my house, I have one. I wasn't able to find it for this afternoon, but if you run into one, keep this story in mind. The Passover Haggadah. The Passover is a very meaningful, holy day. It's a yontiv, a yom tov, a holy day set out in the Torah. And as such, even the most secular, even the most non-observant, the most assimilated, the most unaffiliated Jew, they will come together at Passover. And one of the things that we have in the Passover Haggadah is the section dealing with the four sons, the wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the one that doesn't even know how to ask. The Rasha, the wicked son. Say what you will about the wicked son, even he is at the seder. Even he has a place in the Haggadah. When it comes time for the seder, whoever's leading the seder, the father, the mother, the grandfather, whoever's the leader of the seder, sometimes they will recite the whole thing. Usually what happens to keep kids involved is that different sections are given to different people according to their skill level. And of course, the highlight, one of the highlights of the Passover Haggadah, the Passover Seder, is when the youngest Jew at the table gets to ask the four questions. Sometimes the youngest one is very shy, can barely get through it. Sometimes they're a little older, they're more experienced. Sometimes the youngest person, the youngest Jew at the Seder, is 40, but a very, very important part. If this coming Passover, you can somehow get an invitation, please do. It is, especially if you've never been to one before, or you haven't been to one since you were a little kid. Go to it. I have one last story about a woman who had never been to a Seder before. This was my friend, Alex Katz, who's from Russia. He and his wife, Natasha, are from Russia. And I think it was Alex's aunt. I'm not exactly sure. Alex, forgive me if I'm getting this story wrong. His aunt came over from Russia, from former Soviet Union. Not a lot of religion was encouraged in the old Soviet Union. So a lot of the Jews who came over had zero contact with Judaism. So Alex arranged for his aunt, I think it was his aunt, to have a first Seder and the second Seder. So everything went well. The week goes by, and he runs into his aunt. He says, so, how are the Seders? She goes, well, the first Seder was very nice. The food was delicious. It was very good. And the conversation was very nice. The second one, I learned so much. It was very, very nice. And the people were so sweet. They were so loving. But the third Seder was the best. And Alice goes, what? What third Seder? Oh, I went to third Seder. People invited me from neighborhood. I went to, and we learned about the three matzahs, and one was the Father, and one was the Son, and one was the Holy Spirit, and the red wine was from the blood of... And poor Alex goes, no, that wasn't a Jewish Seder. He goes, what are you talking? He had yarmulke, he had beard. No. they were Christians. No, he was born Jewish. Yeah, he may have been born Jewish. His parents may have been Jewish. His grandparents may have been Jewish. What they're doing, not so Jewish. So that was a little story about someone who had a bit of an adventure on her first Passover. Hopefully yours won't be nearly as dramatic, but we're going to be doing more videos on basic and fundamental texts in Judaism. Please come back. Please listen. Please learn. I hope you're finding these informative and enjoyable. And until next time, on behalf of the Emunah Project, I'm Daniel, and thank you too much.